this episode of RPG 101, we're going to be talking about character building. And we're going to start off with character concepts, because sometimes that makes building your character that much easier. Now, part of the character concept is history. Where your character grew up. Did they have siblings? Were they an only child? Are their parents still alive? If they're dead, how did they die? When did they die? Do they have uncles, aunts, things of that nature? Are they farmers? Are they merchants? Are they nobles? All of these things tie into your character and create a very rich background for them. And I really like requesting these from my players because it makes them more interested in their character and more apt to roleplay. And one of the first rules of the game that I give extra experience for is role-playing your character, because there's nothing worse than sitting around the table and one of your players turns to one of the other players and goes, "Hey thief, go pick that lock." Or, "Hey fighter, can you break this thing open?" Because that shows that not only do they not care about your character, but that you really didn't put a lot of thought into your character, because they don't remember anything that you said. You might be a fighter as far as class, but if you're introducing yourself as Sir Guy of Galahad, you're a noble knight, you have a name, you gave yourself a name, you gave yourself a place you came from, and they didn't care enough about it because you don't show any interest in repeating that. And that's one of the worst things. Even worse than that is being referred to by your race. "Hey elf, go do this. Hey dwarf, go do that." Because there's only one step below that. And that step is turning to the other player and using their name and saying, "John, go do this." It shows that nobody really cares about the depth of the character. Now, I know there's a lot of times that when the game's running slow, you may not remember it. If you're not doing a lot of role-playing for the session, you might fall victim to it. I've done that. I'll look at one of my players and go, "Graham, can you do something? You see this." And I try to use their names. I always jot their names down in my notes. But it happens. But it's going to happen less if you roleplay your character, and it's easier to roleplay your character if you have a mental image of your character in the back of your mind. And your history helps solidify that. It also helps determine why you're adventuring. If you're a farmer, why didn't you choose to stay on the family farm? Were you conscripted to go to war, and when you got done fighting, you couldn't go back to digging potatoes anymore? Are you wanting to build a fortune so your family can stop being farmers? Are you wanting to distance yourself from your humble beginnings? Do you want to become king by your own hand? These are all questions that you want to have as well. One of the biggest things to help you solidify these are to set 3 sets of goals. And that is an immediate goal, a short-term goal, and a long-term goal. An immediate goal would be something like, I want to survive the war, if you're using the example from just a minute ago. Your long-term goal may be anything you want, but your immediate goal, surviving the war, will set your short-term goal, travel the lands. Why are you traveling the lands? Well, that's because of your long-term goal. Let's say you want to become king by your own hand, or you want to rise above your humble beginnings. Well, that's why you have your short-term goal of travel the lands, to adventure, because you want to become something more than you were born as. And having these and writing them down, even on just a little piece of scrap paper that you keep with your character sheet, or whatever you turn into your DM, that's a really good thing to have, because then not only are you showing an interest in the character beyond having a piece of paper to roll stats off of, it also gives the dungeon master something to use to weave into the story, to use as campaign hooks, to make it a personal story to you. That makes it easier for them to tailor the game to make it more exciting and more relevant to your character. For example, if you were conscripted by the army and you survived whatever war and you decide you want to raise your entire family's stations, having you receive a courier from your family asking how your adventuring goes would be something the DM would gladly do just to add more depth to the world. And having said that the money you sent them last was able to fix the community plow, and that they are actually being looked to as more as village elders than just another member of the farming community. Things like that. Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride has several very excellent indicators of having immediate short-term and long-term goals. His immediate goal was to recover from being beaten by Count Rugen. His short-term goal was to learn every style of sword fighting he could possibly learn. And his long-term goal was to find Count Rugen, the man who killed his father, and kill him in revenge. Simplest way it is. You killed my father, I'm going to get you. Revenge is one of the simplest motivations for adventuring, because you don't know who this man is. You don't know where this man is. You hear a clue about a person who has 6 fingers. You run off after him because you think it's the man. You get there, you find out it's not him. Maybe he only had 5 fingers. Maybe he just had a passing resemblance to the man. These are things that a dungeon master can use to tie your personal story into the current campaign, the current session. And these are things that make the game much more enjoyable for both the DM and the player, because now your character has reasons to go to this town instead of the DM says so. You know, it's you're no longer on a plot railroad. You're now actually investigating something that's relevant to you, and while you're there, the town council says, "Hey, we've got this trouble with some orcs outside of town. Could you clear this up? We'll cover your room and board while you're here." These are very simple things that just flesh your character out more, and in fleshing out your character, it really adds to the depth of the game, the enjoyability of the game, and it makes all of your characters just decide to pop off the page. It makes other players start referring to your character by your character name instead of your race or your class or your name, which are all things that annoy me. I actually reward players with extra experience points or campaign points in role-playing their characters, because that shows that they're actually thinking about their characters. And having a good history, having good sets of goals, deciding why your character's out on the road, why they chose the class they did, why they did this. Deciding all these things make a very convincing character, and it makes you actually kind of care about your character, which means if something happens and you're actually in quote-unquote mortal peril for your character, you're going to care more about getting out of that peril because you've invested a lot of time and you actually have a mental image of your character.